So the question is, how do I get my adult child to talk to me? Really, the question, a better question to be focused on, is why are they not talking to me? Right? Why are they not talking to you? There is a reason, and there can be many different reasons, and we're going to try to go over some of the most common ones. But here's the point right from the beginning. If you're not understanding why they're not talking to you, then you're probably going to continue to be at that impasse, at that moment where nothing is moving forward. You're not able to talk with them, and so we want to know a little bit more about why they are not talking. I want to give you an example, a story of someone that I worked with, and it was a family that first started talking with the parents, and it was their adult son. He was a college age, young 20s, that kind of deal, and he had just been a poor communicator in general. Right? They had always had a hard time getting him to open up. The common phrases were, "I'm fine, everything's good. Yep, it's all good." Um, and he was still living at their home. He was supposed to be taking classes. He was supposed to be working, and he was enrolled, and he had a job. And every time the parents asked him about how are things going, he'd say, "It's fine. It's good. Everything's good." Right? And that's all they could get out of him. Over time, they told me they started to notice something. They started to notice that he was just around the home more. Right? He was thought he had classes today, and he's still sleeping. He didn't go into class. They tried to talk to him about it. He's like, "Nope, everything's fine. It's all good." I was like, "I thought he had to work today, but he's sleeping. He stayed up really late, and now he's sleeping in. Is everything going okay with your job?" "Yep, everything's fine. Good. It's all good." Right? They'd get the same story until it just became uh, extremely evident, brutally evident that something wasn't right. He was just staying up almost every night, sleeping all day, clearly not taking his classes, clearly not going to work. And then the truth became unavoidable. That's exactly what was happening. He had flunked out of his classes, and he had been fired from his job. They also found out that a little bit later that he actually got another job and slept in on the very first day and didn't show up, and they promptly fired him. Right? So now they're upset. They feel like they've been lied to. They feel like they've been manipulated. He's not talking with them. They're also worried. They're also concerned. And they're trying to get him to talk about it. But he just absolutely won't. Now it's not even everything's fine, everything's okay. He'll just turn and walk away. He won't even engage with him. He just goes in his room. And they're trying to have these conversations to get to the root of what's happening, but it's just not going anywhere. So, why was he doing that? Right? One, what I learned from this young man is his emotional skills, as in his ability to be in touch with his emotions and awareness of what was going on and how to put that into words and express it. He was not very practiced, kind of immature in that way. So that it was just hard for him in general to talk. And in the beginning, he didn't know how to tell his parents that he was struggling, that he was worried that he was going to fail, that he was getting really anxious and overwhelmed and shutting down. And then when he lost his job and got flunked out of classes, obviously he's embarrassed, he's disappointed, and he's just feeling like a failure. Right? And I had the opportunity to talk to this young man eventually. We eventually was able to get him to have a meeting with me. And that's what I was able to get to the root of pretty quickly. He was just full of shame and lack of confidence in his abilities. And he didn't want to deal with it. He didn't want to talk about it because it made him feel like crap. It made him feel horrible about himself. And so you say, well, why wasn't he talk? He couldn't handle the conversation. He was so overwhelmed by it. And also, by the time this family started talking to me, the conversations had been very contentious, right? The parents would get so frustrated. They're yelling like, you have to talk. Don't walk away from us. And it was just not set up for a good conversation. So many times, what you might be seeing from your young adult is anger. It's avoidance, right? They're pushing back. Get out of my life. Don't talk to me. You could be getting that. It could be some, just a shutdown, kind of an internal implosion. But they're not talking. They're not engaging. So many times, it is their shame. It is their embarrassment. It is the fact that they are depressed and they don't want to deal with it, right? And so that's one of the reasons. Another thing that I see that's very closely related is when you talk to your parents, when you talk to anyone about what's going on, if you can put two and two together, which most do, it means something's going to have to change. They're having a hard time doing whatever they need to do, right? Is it their anxiety? Is it their self-esteem? Is, you know, getting over something that was just so heartbreaking or traumatic and they haven't been able to deal with it? Whatever it is, they're avoiding. And if they're going to talk about it, then it's not going to be avoiding anymore. They're dealing with it, even by that conversation, right? They're having to face the thing that is holding them back. And also, the reality is, then they're going to have to do something about it, right? They're going to have to take action steps, or they're going to have to give up the thing that they're using to escape. And this is where addiction fits in, right? Their online addiction of whatever sort, their substance use, the risky behaviors, the things they're doing to not deal with life, to escape. And when someone is really dependent, right, especially addicted to that way of coping with life, they don't want to give that up, right? And so many times that's a big reason with what's going on. But even within that, uh, they very likely, in deep down, don't want to be addicted, don't want to be wasting all their time, don't want to be doing this. They just can't see how it's possible. I know I'm giving a lot of reasons, but wanted to go a little bit more in depth in this conversation, and we can sort it out later if we need to. Um, Sometimes there are relational wounds that are present, right? There have been hurts, there have been wounds, there have been things that have been said and done in the relationship between parent, child, or caregiver, and those wounds uh, have not been addressed, and they might not want to talk for that reason. I'll tell you another story. Excuse me. It was another family I was working with, and they, their daughter, also a young woman, was, uh, well, basically what happened is she moved out and moved in with a boyfriend, sort of, this guy that she had just met. And the parents knew that she was drinking a lot, and there was a lot of substance abuse with this guy, and they felt like he was a really bad dude, and they were really worried about her. But she was living there, and she was not talking with them. She would not talk about anything that was going on. Um, Fast forward, when I eventually was able to get a chance to talk to this young woman, there was a lot going on. But the main reason she didn't want to talk to her parents is because she was hurt. She was hurt by the relationship. And absolutely, she had a lot to do with that whole dynamic. But she talked about how her mom had always been very controlling, and she never got a say in what she wanted. And her mom always told her what to do. And it's like her mom ran her life. And if she ever pushed back, her mom would get mean. And she told me these like really mean and hurtful things that her mom would say to demean her and tell her that basically that she wasn't good enough and needed to do what the mom said. And how the dad would make hurtful comments as well. And so this girl was like, no way am I going to talk to them because they just put me down and they do all this. And when they were telling her she needed change, she just took off. And I've seen that scenario many times. Now, the other side of it was leading up to her going out, she had brought something like three men in just like maybe a month or so into the parents' home without them knowing and was sleeping with them. Her substance use was increasing, and the parents were trying to talk to her about it, but they were doing it from a very angry perspective, and she just bolted, right? And but she was clearly out of control, and um, well, I was going to talk about it later, but with this young girl, young woman, when I talked to her, we really had to address a lot of the pain and the way that she felt about herself, and give her some hope that she could actually talk this through, that her parents were willing. And I worked with the parents to be willing to have this conversation and talk through some of the wounds that happened in the past so that they could move things forward. So then they could talk about the changes that she needed to make. So that's a big point I'm going to make over and over and over, is knowing why your child isn't talking to you, knowing why they are stuck, knowing why they are discouraged, knowing why they aren't motivated, and then how to have a connecting conversation. So as you see, there's many things that can be going on. And if you don't understand why they won't talk to you, right, then you're likely going to go down the wrong path. And the most common path that I see parents go is right to a solution, right? You need to get a job. You need to make some money. We need to figure out how to get you unstuck, or how to do this or how to do that. And even if it's the best healthy advice in the world, it's spot on what they need. They're not having it. They don't want to have that conversation because they don't feel heard. They don't feel understood. Right? You don't get why this is so hard for me. No, um, that is just a fundamental point that we're making here. Let me get into a couple of other things that I guess you can call it kind of do's and don'ts. But sometimes, and believe me, I'm not trying to shame anyone, make anyone feel bad, but we do need to talk real. And there are many times that I see parents and loved ones trying to connect to that stuck young adult, and it's their approach, right? It's the way that they are approaching that is not effective or is shutting things down. So let's go through some do's and don'ts, and I want to start with some of the don'ts. And the first one is, I was kind of saying this before, but it's leading with emotion, frustration, your fear, your panic, even. And a lot of that will happen because it's kind of like another don't. Don't have conversations when you're upset, when you're emotional, and especially in the moment of conflict, right? So you just found out that they once again did not follow through with what they said they were going to do, right? And the tension is high, and you just feel the emotion of it within you, within them. That's not an effective time to have a conversation. That's a great time to have an argument. And we don't want arguments. So many times it's really that skill of recognizing that you are too frustrated, you are too emotional, and maybe even they are, because it's fresh, right? Whatever just happened, it's happening right now. And you're in the middle of an argument, and then you're trying to have a productive conversation. Many times you want to come back later, and because you can approach it in a totally different way. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Another mistake, another don't, is always pushing fixing the problem, right? Jumping right into what's the solution. And again, you miss what's really going on. Many times, just think about it, how many times you've tried that. Like, all right, let's come up with a solution. Let's come up with a plan. Let's come up with a contract. And it doesn't work because that's not your first step, right? You've got to start with understanding, connection, those type of things. Um, and then lecturing, right? Interrogating sometimes is what it looks like, where a parent probably sounds like what I sound like now. I have these moments of awareness that I'm just talking and talking and talking and giving a lot of points. So I hope people are rewinding or breaking it up. But it can become overwhelming. If I was having a one-on-one conversation with you right now, I wouldn't just go on and on with point after point after point. I would want to connect. I would want to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about and that we're on the same page. We're jiving in this conversation. I have seen it so many times where parents, uh, when their young adult is finally ready to listen, it's like, finally, okay, well, let me pull out my list of 27 things that I've been meaning to say to you and just drop it all on you at once. They can't retain it, it's overwhelming. That's not how you want to go. And you also don't want to corner them, right? The car ambush. Now I have you in the car, and I'm going to just, I'm going to force this conversation. Sometimes that can be a great time to have a conversation, but not if you're forcing it. And yeah, there's many ways. I mean, basically just entrapping. Like I have a captive audience, and I'm going to push this, and then yeah, and also not being demeaning or trying to use like, guilt or shame to get them to talk. One thing parents will say with me that kind of leads into one of the don'ts is they're like, all right, are you just saying I'm supposed to listen to them? And doesn't that mean that I'm agreeing with them? It doesn't. Don't confuse listening or agreeing um, with, or you're listening that, don't confuse listening with that you are agreeing with them. Right? Uh, it's very possible to hear someone and validate their emotion. That's the better way of thinking about it. You're validating their emotion, their experience, but you're not really agreeing with their choice. You can say something like, I can see how this is very overwhelming for you. I see that you are really struggling, that you're very emotional about this, or you're very depressed, or you're very anxious about this. I can see that you really don't want to move forward because you can't see a way to move forward. Right? You're not agreeing that that's like the end all, but you're connecting with them. And so um, I see some parents have a hard time with that. Right? They hear something and they're like, "That's the most stupid thing I've ever heard in my life," and then they tell them, that's so stupid. You're so stupid. Or they take that approach of basically what you're thinking, what you're doing, what you're choosing is invalid, and here's what you need to do. And that's not listening. That's not connecting. So uh, that is a really important point that I want to make. Um, yeah, let's talk about what you can do uh, to get to get that conversation going. A few things is you want to, uh, well, obviously, like what I talked about before, when you are in the moment of a conflict, that's not a good time to talk. What I recommend is that you make these attempts, you make these connections in what I call times of peace, right? And it might start with really small things. It might start with text messages that are very kind and loving, and it's something like, "We know you're having a tough time, and we're here for you, and we would like to talk with you." And then it can move to, when can we talk? And maybe that's right now. Sometimes you could say, uh, what would be a good time or a good way, right? Give them a sense of control or like they're a part of this. What would make the conversation feel safer for you, right? And right there, you're getting into maybe like, well, I'm worried you're just going to yell at me, or you're just going to be disappointed in me, or it's just going to be another argument. And you're getting to a little bit of what's going on in their mind, and you can speak to that. You say, we don't want to have an argument. We want to help you. And you want to clearly state that intention. You want them to know that you are there for them, that you love them, that you care about them. And the main thing you're trying to do is to help them move forward, help them not be stuck, to feel confident about themselves. It's kind of like the what's in it for them, because many times they've made it about you. My parents are disappointed and they want me not to be a loser, or my parents are trying to control me. Um, and and yes, we'll get to that in a minute. There are still boundaries, there are still limits and things like that. But you want them to understand that even when there's a limit, even when there's a boundary, it's about helping your relationship with them. It's about helping them move forward. It's all of these things. And so you want to state that intention. We care about you, we love you, and we want to connect. And then being able to truly listen, truly listen to what's going on. And of course, your tone and body language, those are all very important. I'll go ahead and say it. I find, well, this happens in relationships all the time. We don't always have the awareness of how we're coming across. And I'll see parents and they're like, they'll say, what's wrong about what I'm saying? I'm saying the right thing. I'm saying I care about them. I say, I'm, saying I want to help them. But what I'm seeing as an observer is that it's still coming across in maybe a condescending way. Or there's a backhanded comment that goes along with it. Or they say that they're there, they say the right thing, but then they're not really listening to what their child is telling them. Uh, and you want to, many times, there's another big point, many times this conversation is an ongoing conversation. It's not just one conversation. Sometimes you're doing those little small seeds, like I was talking about, just giving them some encouraging text messages, offering to talk in a different way at a different time. And then when you have the conversation, maybe at first you need to keep it shorter, right? You don't want to lecture, you don't want to overwhelm. Like your main point in the beginning is, I love you. We're on the same team. I'm trying to help you. I care about you. And that's all I want you to know right now, right? And you're rebuilding safety. You're rebuilding connection. And it's unlikely to be just one breakthrough conversation at the beginning. There can be breakthrough conversations later. Those happen. But it's unlikely uh, to happen there. And make sure that you keep your own fears and worries. Um, it's kind of like the balance between showing concern and projecting fear into their life. When parents say stuff like, I'm so afraid of your future, I'm so worried that everything's going to fall apart, right? That's just like throwing anxiety into it. Versus, I care about you. I don't want I don't want you to struggle anymore. I don't want you to have to hurt like this anymore. And it's got to be like this positive future focus, and then giving them time to respond, because a lot of times they need some time to think. To the extent that you have had a contentious relationship, time after time of arguments and inability to talk, or your child has been stuck and struggling for a long time and you haven't been able to connect, The longer that's gone on and the more intense it is, um, the more work you're going to have to do. And also, your child, they're probably not going to buy in immediately that you have changed your approach, that you are maybe taking a softer approach when it's been so much arguing. And sometimes they even test that. They might push back because they don't believe you really care, right? So they're going to try to, you know, push a button or something to get you upset. So then you say, "Yep, see, you don't care, right? I knew this wasn't true." And you want to be ready for that soft response, you know, uh, that you're not giving up, you're not quitting, that you still really do care about them, but things have to move forward. Wow, I have a lot of points tonight, don't I? The more I got into this, even thinking about it, I'm like, this is actually, there's a lot of points that go into this topic. But I'm going to make another one. The balance, uh, it's a balance, but it's also, uh, I call it being persistent and patient at the same time. A lot of what I try to help parents, loved ones do is not give up, right? They get to these places of is it ever going to change? This has been happening for so long, and it's easy for the parents to give up. I don't want you to give up. You have to be persistent, and persistent in a couple of ways, right? You're going to, a conversation doesn't go well, that stinks, but you're still going to attempt again. You know, they tell you, get out of my life, I don't care about you. You're still going to love them. You're still going to make attempts. You're still going to persistently pursue them, but do it in a loving, connecting way while you're speaking truth. Right? Because some of the persistence is, I can see you're hurting. I can see you're stuck. I can see that you're doing things that aren't going to work out for you, that are going to maybe be destructive for you. And I'm not going to let this go. And sometimes that's with boundaries, right? And that's another thing that I'll touch on here in just a moment is it's persistent with the boundaries, such as we're not going to be able to continue paying this for you or support you in this way. This has to change, but we love you and we care about you and want to help you reach it. And so it's that persistent message while being patient. Right? There's many times where you have to give space. Right? You need to say uh, all the points that we've been talking about, and then be patient that it's going to take some time, and not even putting the pressure on yourself that you have to fix everything in one go of it. So that's what I mean about being persistent and patient at the same time. All right, let's talk about uh, a couple of, well, it's really the, I'm going to put it in two categories. I know there's a lot of specific situations, and that's where your questions come in. That's where your comments come in. When someone gives me, something specific, I can speak to that specifically. But the two groupings are parents who still have a child who is mainly living in their home, but is pretty dependent upon them, mainly financially, but it could be things like their, transportation and, even emotionally. But there's a lot of actual tangible dependency, which is really have become enabling. Right? They're not doing work, they're not taking responsibility, and uh, and you're paying the bill, or you're doing that. And the other category is where they're not so dependent upon you, but you're still not connecting. Right? So in that first scenario, uh, you have an advantage and something you have to be very careful with. Right? The advantage is uh, the the support that you're giving, uh, you don't have to do that, right? But you don't just want to pull the plug. I see parents, they get so angry and frustrated, or it's so hopeless, and I have all the empathy and understanding for them, but they go from enabling to so angry that they just cut them off. They just cut them out and all that, and that it comes out mainly uh, as personal, right? You're just trying to punish them. You're trying to make them suffer. They often they don't see it as, wow, I wasn't being responsible, and I put myself in this situation and I deserve this. Many times they think of their parents who are just out to get them, even if they do realize that they didn't do their part. They see their parents as almost like vindictive and hurtful in that moment. Um, so many of these things, and that's a detail we can get into maybe at a future topic. Many of those situations can be more systematic. You can you can cut back on you can set dates, you can set timelines, but then you've got to follow through, right? So the persistency in that moment is, we love you, we care about you, and it's not cool. We're not going to continue paying this forever, and so we're actually going to take some steps and some moments. This is when you're going to pay for this, or this is when you got to start taking care of this. This is when we're going to stop doing this for you, and obviously best if that's a coordinated, cooperative conversation and understood. But the persistency is being loving, being connecting that message. We're here for you. We believe in you, but this is going to happen. Here is a big point with that. You want to be able to connect why you are backing off on something with how that helps your child. You know, for example, you need that feel good feeling of being in charge of your life, that you are supporting yourself, that you are being productive, that you are paying for your own things, that you are moving forward, independent living. This is what you want. And so this is not a punishment, this is helping you move towards that. And you want to be able to make that connection with them. And then obviously being patient that they are going to struggle. They're absolutely going to struggle. That's how it goes. If it was easy for them, they would have done it already. The other group is where your child is not dependent upon you necessarily, maybe for finances. They've moved out. They're making it. Whatever it is, but they're still struggling, right? And they're not talking to you. That's going to be extra doses of patience, right? Where you continue to give that message of, we love you, we care about you, we're here for you, we also are concerned for you, and being able to leave that door open, but persistently giving those messages, even when they say, "F you, get out of my life, I don't care," or they ghost you. You want to, in many ways as possible, get that message that you're still there for them. You still have boundaries, you still have limits. You don't have to be abused by them constantly. It's okay to put an end to a conversation when they're just berating you, but the message is they still care about you. And some of those situations, I was talking with a father last week, and his kids were all struggling, and more emotionally and psychologically in a mental health way. They were all struggling, but they were not talking to him. And anytime he attempted it, they it was anger and hate. And he had made some mistakes. He had done some really wounding things in the relationship. But now he was at a place where he owned it. He had made changes in his life. And he was sincerely trying to rebuild his relationship with his children, who were now young adults. And, they were certainly older and moving into young adult. It took years. That's my point. I've been talking with this person for years, this dad, and his patience and his persistence with, I'm here for you, I care about you, I'm sorry for what I did, um, and but still not being a doormat to their anger. There had to be limits there. They eventually came back. He now has a relationship with his kids, and they are doing so much better. He's helped some of them get into counseling. He's helped with some of the advice. He's connecting and helping them move forward. It's a wonderful story. It took years, years, and sometimes that's what it takes. So I don't mean to make that uh, seem overwhelming or daunting, but sometimes that's also the reality of it. Obviously, if this father had made changes earlier, things would have gone faster. But thankfully, he did. And thankfully, those relationships are restored. Wow. That was a really, really long, intense, in depth talk.